At the day's headlines. Happy to be home. South Korea's national football team are back in Seoul after a grueling couple of days in North Korea for a World Cup qualifying match. It turns out the North Koreans laid on quite the opposite of the red carpet treatment for the squad. Kim Jong-un or Prince Charming? We're assured that's the North Korean leader on the white horse. His jockeying for world attention has the desired effect, though, as speculation swirls that he's set to make a big announcement, potentially on denuclearization. Plus, at least one person is dead and around 60 injured as a powerful earthquake strikes the southern Philippines. Experts warn that aftershocks could continue to rock the region over the coming days. The South Korean national football team is back home this morning after what was quite a bizarre World Cup qualifying match in Pyeongyang earlier this week, as the match was not broadcast live and the only things fans know about the game is the final score, which was 0-0. There's a lot of interest in finding out what the players and the rest of the squad thought. Our Won Jong-hwan reports on the return of the Taeguk Warriors.
It was nearly 1 a.m. in the morning, but football fans and reporters were waiting in line at Incheon International Airport to greet the squad's arrival. It was a welcome return from Tuesday evening's peculiar match against North Korea, where the Taeguk Warriors had to play in an empty Kim Il-sung Stadium with no cameras capturing the action live. Indeed, a member of the South Korean delegation that traveled with the squad said the whole trip was a series of unpleasant surprises.
We couldn't communicate with people back home. There was no internet connection whatsoever. We were blocked in our hotel, so no one was able to move freely. The explanation was that they need to follow their own regulations. When we kept asking about it, everyone acted busy to avoid us.
The team also had to rough it out on the pitch as the North Koreans played very aggressively.
It's a shame we couldn't win, but to be honest, I think we should be happy no one got injured due to the extremely violent way they were playing. We could even hear some of the North Korean players cursing.
South Korea's head coach Paulo Bento also mentioned that the match officials had to stop the game regularly due to the sheer amount of fouls committed by the North Koreans. He said that while they are disappointed not to win, he's pleased his players coped with such a difficult situation. The South Korean teams say they have brought a recorded copy of the game back with them. The match will air on South Korea's KBS 2 at 5 p.m. Korea time on Thursday, providing the video quality is good enough and the full match is included on the DVD. The much anticipated football match between the two Koreas ended with neither side scoring. But to decide who will get the ticket to the Qatar World Cup, the two sides need to meet again, only this time at a packed stadium in South Korea next June and aired live to the world. Won Jong-hwan, Arirang News, Incheon.
Sitting atop a white horse, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has made his first visit to Baekdusan Mountain in nearly 2 years. Kim is known to visit the area when he needs to make a major political decision. The trip has foreign media outlets speculating that, as well as sending a message to the United States, Kim could be on the brink of making a crunch decision, potentially on denuclearization. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
As the first snow of the season fell on Baekdusan Mountain, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was pictured riding on a trail atop an elegant white horse. Kim also visited a special tourist zone under construction in Samjeon County at the foot of the mountain. And according to North Korea's state media, Kim lashed out at the U.S. for its sanctions on the regime and called for national unity.
He said we shouldn't listen to temptation nor seek anyone's help. He stressed the only way to improve self-development and self-prosperity is to follow the path of constant development and carry the banner of self-renewal as it is now.
The visits are also raising anticipation. A big announcement could be in the works, as these two places were frequented by Kim ahead of grand political or diplomatic decisions. 4 media outlets are closely following his visits. CNN reported that the trip comes amid high tensions on the Korean peninsula. The New York Times noted how the trip follows failed working-level talks with the U.S. in Sweden and predicts a major change in Kim's approach to the denuclearization negotiations. The Wall Street Journal speculated that the North Korean leader is trying to show firmly that the deadline for negotiations is at the end of this year. Others say the photo of Kim riding a horse on Baekdusan Mountain is his way of showing his absolute grip on power. The Washington Post noted how the photo of Kim is strikingly similar to Russian President Vladimir Putin's famous shirtless pose while riding a horse. Responding to Kim's trip to the two sites, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs, David Stilwell, acknowledged Kim's criticism of U.S. sanctions, but reaffirmed they will stay in place until the North denuclearizes. While the 4 media outlets covered different angles of the story, there was a common theme in all of them, namely Kim appears on the brink of making a major decision that could shape the nuclear talks going forward. 이승재, Arirang News.
The 40-day countdown is on for the South Korea ASEAN Special Commemorative Summit in Busan, with emphasis on the 3 Ps: people, prosperity and peace, as coined by President Moon Jae-in. The summit will bring together the heads of state from the 10 ASEAN member states. Although there's been no definitive answer yet from North Korea, the South Korean leader's invitation to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un still stands. Park Hee-jun reports.
The 40-day countdown for the South Korea ASEAN Commemorative Summit kicked off on Wednesday, with eyes on the special summit next month, which will bring together heads of state from 10 members of the ASEAN countries to South Korea's southeastern port city of Busan. With emphasis on the 3 Ps, people, prosperity, and peace, as coined by South Korean President Moon Jae-in, summit organizers said they're keeping their fingers crossed that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will make a last-minute decision to take part in the November summit.
We continue to believe that if Chairman Kim visits, it will be positive for peace and stability on the Korean peninsula.
All 3.5 million citizens of Busan dearly wish that Chairman Kim visits the city. We still cherish the time when we welcomed and met North Korean athletes and officials during the 2002 Asian Games. And I think the North also has a good image of Busan.
However, for now, South Korean officials echo in one voice that the North Korean leader's visit is neither guaranteed nor completely out of the question. ASEAN members hold a special key to North Korea, and they have continuously supported President Moon's Korean Peninsula peace drive. 2 ASEAN countries, Singapore and Vietnam, played host to summit talks between leaders of North Korea and the U.S., and the ASEAN Regional Forum exists as the only security dialogue that includes North Korea. The hopeful message came as South Korea launched the one-time ASEAN-Korea train from Seoul to Busan to celebrate the 30 years of bilateral friendship. Taking the train from Seoul Station, the 200 guests from Korea and ASEAN nations have traveled here to the southeastern city of Busan, the host city for the special summit, the largest international event under the Moon Jae-in administration. With the hosting of the South Korea ASEAN Special Summit back in 2014 and other international conferences, including the 2005 Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit under its belt, Busan is confident it will successfully host the South Korea ASEAN Special Summit 2019 and step forward as a major pillar of Asia's economy. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News, Busan.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe sent a tribute to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine on Thursday, the first day of Japan's annual Autumn Festival. Reports say Abe sent a ritual offering instead of visiting the site in Tokyo in person. The shrine commemorates more than 2.4 million Japanese war dead, including 14 Class A war criminals. It has been a source of tension between Japan and its neighbouring countries that suffered from Tokyo's past aggressions. In 2013, Abe visited the site, prompting strong complaints from South Korea and China, who saw it as an attempt to justify Japan's wartime atrocities. South Korea and Japan appear to be closing in on finalising a meeting between the two prime ministers amid the worsening of bilateral ties over wartime history and Tokyo's export curbs on Seoul. Various Japanese news outlets, including the Tokyo Shimbun, reports citing government sources, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and South Korean Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon are considering holding talks next Thursday, that's October 24th. Lee plans to travel to Tokyo next week to attend Japanese Emperor Naruhito's enthronement ceremony. The meeting, however, is expected to be short, as Abe also plans to meet with foreign guests from about 50 countries who will be in Japan for the event. And South Korea and Japan held working-level diplomatic talks on Wednesday to discuss wartime forced labour and Tokyo's export restrictions on Seoul. Our Oh Jung-hee has this report.
Following through on their promise to meet once a month, senior diplomats of South Korea and Japan met Wednesday to discuss the issues that have recently divided them. South Korea's Director General for Asian and Pacific Affairs, Kim Jong-un, met with his Japanese counterpart Shigeki Takizaki at Seoul's Foreign Ministry. The main talking points, the South Korean Supreme Court ruling last year calling for Japan to compensate the people it used in wartime forced labor, and Tokyo's export restrictions. The South Korean side pointed out that Japan's export curbs are retaliation for that court ruling and called for the restrictions to be quickly withdrawn, while highlighting the need to continue dialogue. South Korea also brought up its concerns about radioactive waste from the 2011 Fukushima meltdown. That is, regarding how Japan is considering dumping contaminated water to the sea in the bags of radioactive waste that were lost over the weekend due to Typhoon Hagibis. This working-level meeting comes a week before South Korean Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon visits Japan to attend Emperor Naruhito's enthronement ceremony. According to Seoul's Foreign Ministry, talks between Prime Minister Lee and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe have not been confirmed but are highly likely. Prime Minister Abe has also highlighted the need to mend ties with Seoul. Speaking at a meeting on Wednesday, Abe said it's imperative to continue dialogue with South Korea, and it hopes there will be an opportunity for ties to be rebuilt. However, the Japanese leader still put the blame on Seoul, saying South Korea is breaching trust by supposedly violating their 1965 agreement. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
The number of South Korean visitors to Japan plunged nearly 60% on year in September, following a 48% drop in August. The data released by the Japan National Tourism Organization on Wednesday showed around 200,000 South Koreans traveled to Japan last month. That's a sharp tumble compared to some 470,000 visitors the same month 1 year ago. The decline started in July when Tokyo imposed its export curbs on South Korea. The economic measures triggered a voluntary boycott movement among South Korean citizens who stopped buying Japanese products and refused to travel to Japan. Senior US officials are expected to meet with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara on Thursday to discuss the conflict that's unfolding in Syria. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Kim Dami. So Dami, the Trump administration is sending two of its heaviest hitters to Turkey.
Right, Mark. Vice President Mike Pence and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will meet Turkey's president face-to-face on Thursday in a bid to convince him to end Turkey's military action in Syria. Speaking on Fox Business Network on Wednesday, Pompeo said the trip is to find a resolution to the Syria crisis, not to break the U.S.-Turkey relationship. The talks, in fact, weren't going to happen at all. Erdogan initially indicated his refusal to speak to the U.S. officials, only to reverse his decision in comment to the Turkish press. Emphasizing the need to stop the incursion into Syria, Pompeo said a ceasefire is required before they can start to rectify the situation. Asked if he held Erdogan personally responsible for the crisis, Pompeo just noted that they have to remember it's a complex situation. In the meantime, a letter sent last week by President Trump to his Turkish counterpart has been revealed. Trump warned Erdogan on October 9th not be a tough guy or a fool when Trump's attempt to halt Erdogan's operation failed as Turkey pushed ahead with its attack on Syria. At least one child has been killed and more than 2,000 people have been injured after a 6.4 magnitude earthquake hit the southern Philippines. The earthquake on Wednesday night shook the country's second largest island, Mindanao, setting a shopping mall on fire and causing a house to collapse, leading to the one death. The quake also caused power outages as well as some strong aftershocks in surrounding regions. The Philippines is located on the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is prone to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Just 4 days before another planned mass rally in Hong Kong, the leader of a Hong Kong pro-democracy group has been taken to hospital after being brutally attacked. Hong Kong police said Jimmy Sham of the Civil Human Rights Front was smashed in the head with hammers and spanners on Wednesday night by at least 4 non-ethnic Chinese assailants in Mong Kok. Strongly condemning the attack, Sham's group said the incident would have a chilling effect on democracy advocates and fuel fears of politically motivated white terror attacks in the city. As tensions escalate, such white terror attacks have become more frequent in Hong Kong. In late August, Sham and his assistant were set upon by 2 people in masks with a baseball bat and a rod.
Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information useful for your everyday life. It is Thursday, so we're going to focus on some culture today, as we like to do, and to introduce some cultural events you might want to check out. I'm happy to say we have our Min Sun in the studio. Min Sun, what do you have for us today?
Hi Mark, today I'm going to tell you about a classical music performance that will be fun to watch and listen to. Next week, the Korea National Opera presents the Tales of Hoffmann, an opera by the French-German composer Jacques Offenbach. In fact, it's Offenbach's only opera, but it's a much-loved classic. And this is the 200th anniversary of the composer's birth. They are putting it on at Seoul Arts Center from October 24th to 27th. Now, the Tales of Hoffmann is based on 3 short stories by the writer E.T.A. Hoffmann, who in the opera is inserted into his own stories. This is considered a masterpiece of 19th century French Romanticism.
Okay, so it's only going to be on a 4-day run here in Seoul, but what's so special about this opera, The Tales of Hoffmann?
It's composed in a typical French Romantic style. The Tales of Hoffmann brings together the spectacle of grand opera, elements of fantasy and romance, and the satire and wit of the operati. The protagonist Hoffmann tells 3 love stories in dreamlike or even surreal settings, where a kind of evil interrupts his love. This production is directed by Vincent Bossard from France, and the orchestra is conducted by Sebastian Lang-Lessing from Germany. Interestingly, opera directors and conductors get to make their own versions of this work with different visuals and even different endings. They explain why that is and what they think this work represents.
The Tales of Hoffmann has wide possibility for stage directing and music conducting because the composer died before completing the opera.
This is a piece by a composer who actually wrote operatic comedy, or operettas as we call it in Viennese. And writing at the end of his life a very serious opera is very significant. I think for him it's like his own requiem and his own beliefs what it means to be an artist.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be worth checking out, and I'm sure it's going to be very popular indeed with local audiences. You mentioned before, though, Min-sun, that this particular opera has 3 different love stories in it.
That's right. It's interesting because Hoffmann is the main character and the narrator. As a poet, he tells love stories from his past, and then when those stories play out on the stage, he joins as part of the story. It's important to know this because switching back and forth might be confusing, but the director does it in an interesting way. The singer who plays Hoffmann explained his role like this.
From the first to the 5th act, Hoffmann's character goes on a journey of love and rebirth as an artist. I try to show every detail as he grows and develops as a person, and the frustrations that crush him as an artist. I'm trying to make it easier for audiences to understand when I switch between who the character is in the present and who he was in the past.
Now, aside from the main character, all the other singers play multiple roles, including Hoffmann's lover. For example, there are 4 women characters in the story, all played by one singer. It's exciting for audiences because these roles require a big vocal range, which is another reason opera singers say the Tales of Hoffmann is a challenge.
It's one of the most difficult things to accept in the whole opera repertoire, I think. The whole 4 roles in Hoffmann. Why? Because technically it demands a high concentration, physically and psychologically. So we have to discover ourselves in order to bring that on the stage and to switch in a very, very, very short time from one character to another.
The opera is performed in French with Korean and English subtitles, and it runs for 3 hours with 2 intermissions.
Okay, it sounds very interesting indeed. So search for the Tales of Hoffmann, Seoul, if you want to try and get your hands on a ticket. I'm sure lots have already been sold already, but thank you for introducing us to that opera today, Min-sun. It's always a pleasure having you. Have a good day. And now we are going to take a quick look at some other cultural events coming up here in South Korea.
Good morning. Korea is having the most comfortable time of the year, weather-wise, with adequate temperatures and humidity, along with beautiful autumn colors. So as long as we dress accordingly for the chilly mornings and evenings. Temperatures have returned to season norms and skies will be partly to mostly cloudy, and by the afternoon, highs will get up to 20 degrees Celsius here in the capital, and other regions will be warming up just in time for lunch. So daily highs will be between 19 and 22 degrees Celsius in most parts of the country. Temperatures should remain around the average for this time of the year. Inland regions, meanwhile, will see rain on Friday, while the East Coast and Jeju Island will see showers on Saturday. Many are coming down with colds due to wide temperature differences. So how about making a tea blend at home using several of these cold-fighting teas to treat your specific symptoms? That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now on this Thursday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to us here on Arirang TV, and our daily reminder that our next newscast is at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.
BizSmart shed light on the advanced technologies and improved competitiveness of domestic startups, which have achieved remarkable growth as global businesses. This week